2. I am joined by Samantha, who is one of our primate keepers here, and behind us are the black and white ruffed lemurs, one of the largest lemur species in the world. They're the second largest, if I'm not mistaken, but they are very big lemur boys. Now, Samantha, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been here? Who do you work with? And how long have you been working with these lemurs?
All right, so I am a primate keeper here at the Philadelphia Zoo. I'm considered a relief keeper, so I get to work between all the different groups of primates. And I also do a couple African plains animals thrown in there too, so primate keeper with a lot of different experience.
That's fun.
It's very fun. But yeah, I have been here, it'll be 13 years this summer, and I started off actually only working in this building, so I know the lemurs very, very well. Kiaka and I go way back. I've been here for all of her babies. Currently, Kiaka and Huey are joined by their 6 children, so there are 8 lemurs total in this social group. Yes, you can pan into some of our new. We have 2-month-old babies, Olivia and Mikey.
Who's that?
That one, I'm still learning them because they are hard to tell apart. That is Olivia. She's a goofball.
Oh my gosh.
So they're currently, they were just fed their carrots and their celery and their broccoli. They got some fresh browse today. Browse is just a leafy green that is literally cut off of a tree, often only moments before they get it, so it's nice and fresh. And they're foraging and eating as lemurs do.
Okay, so black and white ruffed lemurs, one of the largest lemur species in the world, which we just mentioned, and they, like all lemur species, are native to Madagascar.
Correct.
Now, unfortunately, this is a critically endangered species, which is one of the reasons why we have them here and one of the reasons why we've had these babies. Can you give us kind of a brief overview of what's going on in Madagascar that is so challenging for lemurs?
So, of course, in Madagascar, we have some mining that's happening in order to get various minerals for recyclable batteries, and that is pretty disruptive towards their habitat. We still, unfortunately, have bushmeat, which means illegal hunting of these guys to eat, and we also have a lot of agricultural practices which are disruptive to their habitat. So a lot of slash and burn farming, or just taking over forest as farmland.
And it's important to note that Madagascar is an island, so, and it's not it's a large island as far as islands go, but it's not a very big space. So every time we tear down a forest in Madagascar, that's less and less room for these lemurs to be able to survive, which is why they are now critically endangered. And their population has declined significantly over the past several decades. So these babies that we just had, they're actually an important part of lemur conservation, on top of being probably the cutest thing in this building right now. No offense to all the other primates in the building, there's a lot of them. But those babies are also really important. Now, when we've had, do you have any idea how many black and white ruffed lemurs over the years?
Yeah, so our first litter was, she had 4. After that, we had Singleton, so that was Bob. He was all by himself.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, and then Connor and Lucas joined us, and now Olivia and Mikey. So
oh, wow.
I can't do the math quickly. Was that 9?
That's okay. Something like 9. That sounds about right. So Kiaka has been a very, very good lemur mom.
Yes,
over the years.
She's an excellent lemur mom.
And actually, that is a great thing to discuss. Let's talk a little bit about black and white ruffed lemur babies. Where you going with that carrot, buddy? He's just lost in that carrot. He loves it. Can you tell us a little bit about how they rear their young? Because the way that they take care of their babies is actually really unique.
Yes, it is. So, oftentimes when you picture a primate having a baby, you see them clinging to the fur like a gorilla would or a small monkey. But black and white ruffed lemurs are unique in that they park their babies once they're born, so they actually put them in a nest. Usually the first 2 weeks, mom is with them 24/7, nursing them, making sure that they're protected and well established. And after that, she'll start to venture out for foraging. And these guys grow very quickly, as you can probably guess, because like they're 2 months old and they're already eating solid foods. They're bouncing around. They're interacting with their siblings. So yeah, they mature rather quickly. By 1.5, 2 years, they are actually considered sexually mature.
Oh, wow.
So they have a quick turnaround in that aspect. And her gestation, which is how long she's pregnant, is quite short. It's about 3 months.
Yeah.
So they can reproduce pretty rapidly.
That's amazing. That baby is just munching on that food.
Yeah, so in the wild, these guys are considered frugivores primarily, so they're actually really important for seed dispersal in Madagascar and pollinators.
Right. Yeah, they're actually, I read this, they are the largest pollinator in the world.
That is correct. Yeah. So Our fruit here in America is very different than the fruit that they would find in Madagascar. It's high in sugars and not as good for them. So our nutritionist has come up with a diet. That's why when I first mentioned what they were eating, it's not all fruit right now. But she comes up with a really nice substitute that meets all of their dietary needs, and that way they're not getting fat on our version of the fruit that's not quite as healthy for them.
Of course. So that's why we just make sure to cut the sugar out as much as we can and still give them a nice, healthy variety.
Correct.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the other thing I like to talk about with lemurs is that black and white rough lemurs, they are female socially dominant.
That's
so
right.
Kiaka, our female, is in charge. So she calls the shots. She kind of leads the family group. We often will offer them access to the trail, so she sort of decides if they're going to go outside that day. She decides when they come in. She decides who gets to stand where when they're eating.
Wow.
She calls all the shots.
She's like a little stage manager for her whole family. Good for her.
She's very good at her job.
That's awesome. Now, lemurs have a pretty unique role in their ecosystem as well. We did talk a little bit about how they are pollinators. I think we briefly mentioned that they're also seed dispersers.
Correct.
But they rely really heavily on very specific types of trees and types of fruits that they can find. And what we've actually found over the last several decades is that as habitat destruction is happening on Madagascar, the fewer lemurs we have, the fewer new trees that also come about from that. So this is actually a compounding problem that as these practices are being upheld in Madagascar and continue to happen, not just, and for the record, it's not just because of the people who live on Madagascar, it's because there are people like us in the United States who buy these products that are made from the materials that are mined and harvested in Madagascar. Because that's happening, these lemurs are declining, which is actually making their own problems worse. And I wanted to point that out to make everybody aware at home that this is a very, very cute animal that you can see here in Philadelphia, and you may think that you have nothing to do with its survival, but you actually do. And I just want to point out that the things that you do every day can help or harm wildlife. And it's important to take some time to recognize what role you want to play on this planet and whether or not that role is to the benefit or the detriment of the wildlife around you and around the world. And this is actually, June is Zoo and Aquarium Month, which is why I wanted to bring this up. So here at Philadelphia Zoo, we are doing our part by making sure that our lemurs are continuing to help the species by having these babies and making sure that the species does not go extinct. And zoos actually, historically, have contributed to helping to repopulate black and white ruffed lemurs in the wild, which is pretty cool. It's been a couple of years since that's happened, but it's something that zoos can actually participate in. So all of you watching at home, you are helping us out today by supporting the Philadelphia Zoo. And once we are able to reopen to the public, you'll be helping us out even more by coming to visit us, which hopefully will be in the near future. We're not quite ready yet, but hopefully we'll be able to see you guys soon. Now that I can get off my soapbox for a second, I wanted to make sure we got that out there and everybody knows how important it is to help these lemurs out. I did want to talk about something really cool that's unique to lemurs, and that is their tooth structure. Can you tell us a little bit about lemur socialization and why their teeth are actually really important for that?
Yeah, so large social groups of animals usually have dominant individuals. We discussed Kiaka is in charge here. And one of the most important things to establish relationships is grooming. So they actually have something called a tooth comb. So if you're to look at their bottom teeth, it actually has tiny little teeth looking very much like a comb.
Yeah.
And they will use that to groom each other and formulate these bonds and these relationships. They also are doing they've got some cool adaptations that you're sort of seeing here. Yep, one of the babies is doing it.
Cool.
So
yeah.
they hang by their back feet, and this is as I mentioned, they're frugivores. They can get all kinds of different fruits by hanging upside down. It gives them a little more of a range, so they're able to get some extra food that way. So they do it all the time. And part of our enrichment program is we often will try to hang, like that one feeder is a little further down, because we're trying to have them do this natural behavior and hang by their back feet.
That's so cool. Now, you just mentioned enrichment, and enrichment is a huge part of how we care for our primates here. Can you tell us a little bit about some of their favorite types of enrichment?
Yeah, so I would say with the lemurs, they really do enjoy the types where they're hanging on their feet, as I just mentioned. They really enjoy different scents. Scents play a big part in social groups as well, because that's one of the ways that animals will communicate with each other. So it's fun for them to smell different things that you would find in your cabinet at home, like cinnamon or sage, nutmeg. We'll even do some stinky perfumes, natural like oils, things like that. So they enjoy smelling those and rubbing their scents on top of them and trying to out-scent the scents.
So this is a scent marking species. Are they relatively territorial in the wild?
These guys are actually not super territorial in the wild.
Cool.
They have a range of vocalizations, and what they're known for, and marking their territory is not one of them. So they mostly use, I'm hoping that they'll call during this. They're very, very chatty. Their call is very, very loud. Can be heard up to a half a mile away. And it's really cool to hear, especially when they're outside on our trail. People will hear it all throughout the zoo and come running to find out what it was. But typically with these guys, what they're doing is trying to figure out where everyone is, warning about a predator that might be coming by, or just the lead female saying, all right guys, this is where we're headed.
And you know what? Their long calls have shown up in the background of many Zoo at 2 videos.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Because you really can hear them from all over the zoo. Now, in addition to that long call, what other types of vocalizations do they make?
It's kind of like a shriek, to be honest. A shriek and like a yell. It's very loud, and it's cool. So
But they're in the rainforest. They have to
correct. It has to be.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a very dense area. You need to be able to be heard, and all of them will join in. It's especially cute when you're seeing the babies learning how to do it. There's this extra high pitched
That
as
was
they're
my next
getting
question.
there.
Yeah.
So they also learn how to do it. It's part of being in the social group.
How long will the babies stay as part of this social group? Because you mentioned that she's had many, many babies over the years, but they don't all live here anymore. So what's
Correct.
the timeline for that?
Some of it is up to us, and some of that is up to Kiaka. Because this is a female-dominated group, species, she will decide when it's time for Olivia, her daughter, to leave, because she considers Olivia to be competition,
Yes.
and she doesn't want that. So anywhere between 1.5 to 3 years is typically when a female lemur will be leaving her social group. And the boys, I mean, many of her sons are still with her as we speak, so she's had very heavy on the males, and we've had very few females.
Yeah, that's right, actually, yeah.
So Bob and Connor and Lucas are still with us in Lincoln as well.
That's right. This is only our second female baby, isn't it?
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
wow, okay, yeah.
So, it just sort of depends on the species survival program, and if we have breeding recommendations for our males or females and where they're going to go from there.
Oh, so cool. How big can a lemur family get?
So they can get pretty large in the wild, and again, it's mostly dependent upon resources. So if there are plenty of resources and food is good, a lemur group will get pretty large. It's when the resources start to dwindle that they'll often split into smaller groups.
That makes sense. Okay, so we talked a lot about these guys, but there's still so much we have left to cover, so let's take some questions from the audience. What do we got so far?
How many babies can they have at one time?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So rough lemurs typically have between 2 and 6 babies at a time. Kiaka changed that by having Bob by himself, but that was after a litter of 4. So 4 is the most that she's ever had. 1 is the least she's ever had. And 2 seems to be her favorite number.
2 is her favorite number. Good for you, Kiaka.
We mentioned that they were endangered. Do we know how many are left in the wild?
So with a lot of species that live in rainforests, and particularly species that live on islands and in areas that are difficult to get to, it is extremely challenging to be able to find their wild numbers. So we unfortunately do not have a reliable number. What we do know is that there are fewer lemurs than there used to be, and we can tell because of how frequently people hear them call, and how frequently we find their droppings, and how frequently we find evidence of lemurs having been there. Because they actually, and this species in particular, they typically spend most of their time in the canopy of the rainforest, which means they are especially difficult to track and to find. So while we don't have reliable numbers, we do know that it is significantly less than it used to be, as few as 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So we know that their numbers are drastically declining, and we know that it's getting harder and harder to find them. So that's how we know that they are critically endangered, not necessarily because we know exactly how many are left.
What is their natural predator?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That is.
So they have a handful of natural predators. Believe it or not, hawks will often pick these guys off. I mean, you see how tiny those babies can be. And again, if you have a nesting animal, as we spoke, they're a little more vulnerable when they're left alone in a nest. So hawks will pick them off. There's a couple species of mongoose that will eat lemurs. There's a really cool carnivorous mammal that is only found in Madagascar called a fusa. We actually happen to have a fusa here at the zoo.
We highlighted him. If you're not familiar with a fusa, we did do an episode with a fusa a few weeks ago, so you'll have to go back and find that one. It's super cool.
Yeah, so the fusa is a super cool animal that really likes to dine on lemurs. And then, of course, as with basically every animal, humans are one of the worst predators for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, quite a few different animals would like to snap
because they are really cute. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sam. Thank you for everybody at home for watching today. We cannot wait to welcome you back here at the zoo, but until then, you can continue to support us by watching Philly Zoo at 2. And you can also go to our website to donate to our Spring Back Fund. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow with a brand new animal friend on Philly Zoo at 2. Bye.